is brought to you by Head Start Basketball.
Hey, Hoopheads, score major savings in the ultimate off-season training solution during Dr. Dish Basketball's April Super Sale. Get $3,500 off Dr. Dish CT Plus and unlock endless stats, drills, and training capabilities. Shop before April 30th of 2025 or while supplies last. Learn more at drdishbasketball.com and follow their incredible content at Dr. Dish B-Ball on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Mention the Hoopheads podcast and save an extra $300 on the Dr. Dish Rebel, All-Star, and CT models. Those are some great deals, Hoopheads. Get your Dr. Dish shooting machine today.
Hi, this is Corey Heights from Prep Athletics, and you're listening to the Hoopheads podcast.
Coaches, Game Changer is making your game film more valuable than ever. New this season to Game Changer, Film Room allows team staff to analyze full game videos, add comments to specific moments, and quickly share feedback with other coaches, team members, or families. The #1 youth sports app automatically skips downtime in the game film, condensing event video into active play so you can focus on the moments that matter. The best part? It's completely free for coaches. Download Game Changer now on iOS or Android and take your coaching to the next level with Film Room on Game Changer. Game Changer. Stream, score, connect. Hello and welcome to the Hoopheads podcast. It's Mike Klensing here without my co-host, Jason Sunkel, but I am pleased to be joined for triple-double number 18, Rob Brost, head boys basketball coach at Bolingbrook High School in the state of Illinois. Rob, welcome back in.
Man, great to be back. I know it's been a little bit, but it's always great to be on with you and Jason, now without Jason.
Very excited to talk to you tonight, Rob, because for anyone out there who doesn't know, Rob just had an opportunity to have an unbelievable experience at the Hoop Summit in Portland, Oregon, where he got an opportunity to work with some of the best young talent on the court, but also a ton of great talent on the sidelines. And so we're going to talk to Rob a little bit about his experience, hit on our normal 3 topics, and we're going to start with just the general overview of what that experience at the Hoop Summit was like for you. So kind of take us through, first of all, how the opportunity to participate in that came to you, and then we can go from there.
Yeah. I've done a lot of things for USA Basketball and had a lot of different assignments, whether that be court coaching, coach academies, youth camp, 16U tryouts, 17U tryouts, all of those things. And I think it was maybe even November, maybe even October, when I got the call asking if I could do Hoop Summit. And, when there's 3 high school coaches in America that get asked to do that, you feel pretty good about it. And, I was thrilled and excited to do it. Obviously I had worked with a lot of those kids prior through USA Basketball. So I knew a lot of the kids, and, the coaches I knew pretty well, but now I feel like I know them very, very well, which we'll probably get into later. So, I got the call probably right before our high school season started. And of course, that was all under wraps until, the official announcement in January, maybe late January, early February, as to who was coaching the team. And then the team was announced, which was also exciting to, know exactly who's going to be there. And, Frank, Charlie, and I, and I'll get into those 2 guys here in a little bit, but Frank, Charlie, and I met at least 10 times or so over Zoom prior to even getting there, because it's a unique event, right? Because you're getting 12 players who really, they know each other, but they haven't really played exactly together in this situation. And it's not an all-star game. It's not anything like that. It's one game. So from a coaching standpoint, our charge is to obviously win the game, but we have a lot of different factors, in addition to win the game. And so, and I'm quoting Don Showalter here, that this is the best world team that has ever been assembled. And so that was provided some unique challenges as well. And I had some good fortune of some crazy, lucky, good things happen to me on the way there, which I'll probably get into in a little bit. But the overall experience was just phenomenal. The way that USA basketball runs things from top to bottom is first class in every way, shape, and form. And the world team was really, really talented this year in particular. Not that there hasn't been talented world teams in the past, but this one, I think, was, like Coach Showalter said, the best world team that they've assembled. And so, it's great to be around that caliber of player, but also, we're practicing at Nike headquarters. We're practicing at, the Trailblazers practice facility. We're playing and practicing in the Moda Center where the Trailblazers play their games. And so, the entire thing from top to bottom is first class in every way. And, the support staff, I cannot say enough about the support staff of USA Basketball. Anything we ever needed, we just simply asked for it. And usually between 30 seconds and a minute later, we would get whatever it is that we said we needed. And so it was a really unique experience, of course, and one that few high school coaches get to do. But I'm just grateful beyond measure that I got to, participate and really participate in the lives of 12 guys whose lives are really, really about to change. And, in the next month, they're going to go off to college, and then that NIL money is kicking in and all of those things. So their lives are really about to really take off in a different direction, in a good way. And, it's great to make connections with all of them and to really connect with them in a personal level. And I'm so excited to watch how their careers progress and how they do, moving forward.
We'll talk a little bit about the players in a second. Walk me through the itinerary of what day to day you get there.
Yeah.
Just kind of walk us through how this event gets put together and what are some of the things that you participate in that are an official part of the Hoop Summit. Obviously, I'm sure there's a lot of time sitting around informally just talking, but what are the formal things that you've gone through?
Well, just one quick thing that happened on my way there, and I'm not going to say this person's name or the team that he works for, but I get onto the plane to go to Portland on Tuesday morning, and I sit down, and the person next to me says, "Hey," I had a USA basketball sweatshirt on, and they say, "Hey, what are you doing? Going to Portland?" I said, "Well, I'm going to coach a Nike Hoop Summit," and this guy says, "I'm the director of international scouting for such and such a team." I'm not even going to say the team because I don't, And so he and I immediately start talking about the entire roster of the world team. He knows every player just by their names and starts telling me about every single one of the players. And so that was just a unique thing that I just happened by luck. And so that's how the trip started off, me sitting by the director of international scouting for an NBA team, and he and I talking about the entire roster of the world team, and me taking notes just from the thoughts off the top of his head of about every single player on the world team. So that's how the trip started. But to get back to your question, we got there on Tuesday, and then on Wednesday we had two formal practices. On Thursday we had a practice in the morning, and then we had a scrimmage Thursday night. And then on Friday we practiced and then had a team event Friday night. Saturday morning we had a walkthrough, and then we had the game Saturday night. Flew home on Sunday. Now, obviously, that's the abridged version of all the formal things that we were at but there was, more preparation than you can imagine, I guess, you would say, because, we're playing a team that has got, the world team gets, I think it's 6 or 7 more practices than we got. So they all got there several days prior to us getting there, and they had, several days more practice than we had. So, and Marshall, the coach of the world team, Marshall Cho, he does a great job, and he's an outstanding coach who's also a good friend of mine as well. So we knew we were up against it, but it went okay at the end, of course. But we'll get into how the game went, I'm sure, later on in the conversation. But everything from the practices to the team meals to the team event that we had on Friday night to, things that you don't really think of, those guys signing basketballs, the security detail that protects the players, all of those things are factors into, the game on Saturday. And you have to take all of that into account. And USA Basketball does a great job of all of that.
Tell me about the coaching staff. Let people know who are the people that are a part of the coaching staff. And then after we do that, let's talk a little bit about sort of the practice planning process that you guys in USA Basketball go through.
The staff was tremendous. I was, when you look at the coaching staff, you might be wondering, how is Rob Brost a part of this thing right here? Like, how did he get in here? So, which will become a little more clear when I describe and tell you about the other coaches. Frank Bennett was the head coach, was the head coach for Hoop Summit. He's the head coach at Chaminade High School in St. Louis, a perennial powerhouse on a national scale. Jason Tatum went there. He had Jason Tatum among, several other great players, and has built just a great, great program. On top of that, he teaches math at the high school and is just a brilliant high school basketball coach. And on top of that is one of the most humble and it sounds, generic, but is one of the nicest human beings that you're ever going to meet. Totally grateful, totally humble. Let us do a lot of coaching, and by us I mean the 2 assistants, and I'm about to describe to you the other one, the other assistant, in a second. But Frank really set the tone for everything from an organizational standpoint to what we were doing on the floor. But at the same time, he gave us a lot of freedom to do what we do and to contribute what we know. So I think it was egoless as much as possible, and that all started with Frank Bennett. So he's the head coach. And then the other assistant coach besides me is Charlie Ward. And I have tried to describe this to my son, who's 17 years old. And now I'll try to describe it to the listeners who might be not quite as old as us. Charlie Ward, for my money, is the greatest athlete of all time to ever walk the planet. He was a first-round draft pick in baseball. He was a first-round draft pick in the NBA. And he won the Heisman Trophy, which means he was the best football player on the planet at one time. And he would have been a first-round draft pick in football. And so I don't know any other human being that has all 3 of those. Incidentally, Charlie was just named the head coach at Florida A&M today as we're recording. He kind of gave us a little heads up that it was coming, but I'm so happy for him. And for somebody that's a 12-year NBA veteran that was a first-round draft pick in Major League Baseball and a Heisman Trophy winner, is the most humble person that I've ever met with those type of accolades. He's one of the best human beings that I've ever met. And so those are the other 2 coaches. And then for some reason, there's this bald, a little overweight, guy from Illinois thrown in with these 2 guys. So
you can go through your draft history now of all the different sports where you were drafted. the slots where you were drafted in,
Yep.
right? I'm waiting for that. I'm waiting for that part of your bio next.
I just went over all the slots that I was drafted in professional athletics, and it's over. That is the whole list. There's nothing to the list. And so, I've known Frank and Charlie for several years, but this experience just brought the three of us much closer. And, those guys are dear friends, and I totally respect how they go about their business and how they relate to kids, and for that matter, how they relate to other people. And, we've been doing this long enough, this pod long enough, that I truly believe that relationships are the key to the whole thing, and they do as well. And so it was really refreshing to, get paired up with two guys that are like-minded and think very similar to how I think. And not that everybody has to think how I think, or not that I need to think how they think, but just the genuine care that they have for other people, and the respect and admiration, and quite honestly, gratefulness, for lack of a better term, that they show towards people, was just refreshing, and exactly, how it should be. And so, you hear that nice guys finish last. Well, here's two nice guys for sure. I would hopefully people consider me one of them as well. But here's three really nice guys working together and actually, doing things, quote unquote, the right way, and being rewarded for it. And so I just cannot say enough about those two guys. And I still haven't quite convinced my son that Charlie Ward is the greatest athlete ever to walk the planet. But I think I told Charlie, like, if he was in college right now, he would be like a $5 million a year quarterback at Florida State. Like, it would be unbelievable, the money that he would be able to make, but not demand, because he doesn't demand really anything. And he's so humble about it. But, so anyways, those are the two guys I was working with. Frank was outstanding from the get-go, and Charlie, super cerebral, and one of the nicest human beings that I've ever met.
What are the conversations like with the three of you as you're going into a practice session with your guys? What are you guys talking about? What's the process like? Yeah. How many people are just the three of you involved in getting that? Are there other people, representatives from USA Basketball? How does that work when you're starting to think about how do you put your guys through a practice session?
The practice planning itself was the three of us. And then, Anthony from USA Basketball was our film guy, and he really helped us clipping practice clips, getting clips of some of the world guys, ready and exactly how we wanted them, and getting all the film spliced down for our guys. And we showed some clips from last year's game, and, all of the things that you would do to prepare. But, Charlie, Frank, and I did the practice plan itself. And then obviously Frank put together the final practice plans. And then, we would execute them, obviously. When we got there, we had the first practice plan completely done before we got there. And then we templated the second and third practices. And then after that, we were just going to kind of go as we went. So we had a big chunk of the work done before we even got to Portland. But we wanted to have the flexibility to change things, obviously as we needed. And so one of our biggest concerns was not to give the players too much. First of all, these guys are the best players on the planet, number one, at their age group. And then number two, we're preparing for a game, but we didn't want them to be, paralyzed by all the stuff that we put in, so to speak. And so, that provided a unique challenge because you're only preparing for one game, right? So you might need this, but you probably won't, but you might. And so, we had to be prepared, meaning we, the coaches, had to be prepared for just about everything. Whereas the players, we kind of picked and chose what we wanted them to get during practices in order for them to play free and to play loose and to be able to just play basketball, but within a structure. And I think for the most part, we did that pretty well.
What was the hardest thing to cut out that you guys thought, man, we really want to get this in, but we just don't have time to include it? Does anything fit that bill?
I think like all the special situations that could have come up, when you're dealing with your high school team, you put in like one a day, right? Or two a day, just so they at least see that situation. And obviously you can't predict every single thing, but we were like, well, what if it's X happens? Well, what if Y happens? And then we were finally like, well, probably that's not going to happen. And so we had kind of a Rolodex of things that we were prepared to kind of draw up on the fly that we hadn't introduced to them yet. And we had discussed this with the team, like, hey, we only have 3 days, literally, where the world team has 6 or 7 days. And so we're not going to be completely prepared, but we use the term map it. I do this with our guys, and this was one of the things that Frank let us do. We would say map it a lot, which means make a play. And so, we would give them spacing, and then we would say, you're going to have to map it from here, which means make a play. And so, there was a fair amount of that. But we had, 4 or 5 general things we wanted to do on offense and 4 or 5, actions that they kind of had at their disposal. And, and then it's just like a regular game. We want to control the glass. We want to get paint touches, and we want to spread the floor. And then after that, you can just map it and just play. And so, that was probably the biggest challenge as far as like what to give them and and when I say give them, I mean like actually practice and go over. Because, this is a really unique situation.
Walk us through the game.
Yeah. Oh, the game was great in a lot of ways, but it, was very challenging. I think, we knew, especially the 3 coaches, that the world team was going to be good. I don't think any of us, including the players and the coaches, thought the world team would be that good. And they were really good. And 2 or 3 of them have played professional basketball in Europe for several years and were used to playing against, grown men, I guess you would say. And so they were prepared. And so we came out right off the bat, and we kind of hit them in the mouth a little bit, and we got up, 6 or 8. And then in the second quarter, the exact opposite happened. We kind of had a little letdown. We had some issues turning the ball over. And next thing you know, we go into halftime down by 10. And so, I'm not going to lie to you. There was a little bit of, I would say nervousness from the Team USA brass, I guess you would say, as we walked by through the locker room. And, you could feel that a little bit, but rightfully so, because we did not play well in the second quarter. And then in the third quarter, it was similar to the first, except for we kept going. I think we won the third quarter like 37-15 or something. So we really, really played well, played together, shared all of those things. And in the fourth quarter, Marshall made some adjustments. They went zone. We acted like we had never practiced against that before for about a 3-minute stretch. They made a run. And so, long story medium, we go to overtime. And then, we pretty much controlled the overtime. And I think we won by 10 or 12. I don't even remember what the final score is. But bottom line is we won. And so, we got a victory for the United States. And I think that's the 5th win in a row for the United States in the Hoop Summit. And so I think the world team had won 7 times previous. I think it's like we're 18-7 now in the Hoop Summit, but we've won 4 or 5 in a row now. So that part is really, really good.
Well, and you'll be invited back now, Rob. That's the good news.
Well, who knows? I don't know if the guy that doesn't really fit with the other two will, whatever. I mean, that's above my pay grade. That's for somebody else to decide. But it was really enjoyable, and it was great because we were preparing, to do so. Like, we had a goal in mind, we had an end game, and that was what we wanted to do. And Frank did a masterful job at halftime of challenging the guys without, getting on them so much that it crushed them. And so, he did a really, really good job of that. And, then we came out in the third quarter and did what we did. So, and then I think we got a little comfortable because we were up, I think it was by like 18 going into the fourth quarter. So I think we got a little comfortable, and then they went zone and we turned it over a couple times, and they hit some really big shots. You got to give them credit. Their kids were very prepared, and a couple of them are pros already. And so, they did a really, really good job.
High school and middle school basketball program directors, listen closely. Coaches are expected to do far more than just coach. You know this. It doesn't matter if you're doing the coaching yourself or you have a full staff of coaches with you. You know very well that coaches handle scheduling, academic issues, parent communication, leadership development, and even mental health concerns for athletes. A lot to deal with. And when coaches are stretched too thin, it impacts the development of athletes, team morale, and the overall success of the program. There are several ways to prevent you or your coaches from feeling overwhelmed. However, I'll tell you one of our favorite ways to keep coaches firing on all cylinders, and that's athlete-driven accountability and organization. Instead of coaches constantly reminding players about assignments, grades, and practice schedules, the programs at Playmaker Planner put the responsibility back on the athletes. By tracking their own academics, goals, and commitments, student athletes become more self-sufficient, which of course allows the coach to focus on what they love doing most, coaching. Let's find out if the programs from Playmaker Planner can be a complement to what you're already doing. Visit playmakerplanner.com/stop-is-this-for-you to find out more. All right, let's flip it into reflection mode. For you, from a personal standpoint, as a coach, and you think about that experience and what you are able to draw from it and bring back home with you, what are one or two lessons, ideas, thoughts, things that struck you while you were there that you think are going to impact you as a coach moving forward?
Yeah, I think about this a lot, whenever I have a USA basketball experience, whether it's training camp or, part of the 16U team or 17U team. And this, camp in particular, it's not so much the X's and O's that I learn about, although that's part of it. It's how, like, I see Frank, for example, connect with the players, and how I see Charlie make a connection with the players. And hopefully they see me do the same. And hopefully they glean some of that from me as well. And so, I think from an X's and O's standpoint, I don't want to say we do everything right at Bolingbrook High School, but a lot of the concepts and a lot of the things that we do at USA Basketball, we also do at Bolingbrook High School. And that's probably because those are the guys that I am closest to. Not just Frank and Charlie, but all the USA Basketball guys. And good basketball is good basketball, whether you're coaching NBA players, whether you're coaching high school players, it doesn't matter. The other thing I will say that was refreshing, if you take the talent level aside, obviously these kids are really talented, but off the floor, they act just very similar to the kids at Bolingbrook. And what they do off the floor and how they act and how they goof around and how they do things is very similar to kids everywhere. And they wouldn't just be similar to kids at Bolingbrook. It's similar to kids everywhere. And so, that part was refreshing. The fact that they can jump really high, that they have great bodies, that they're skilled beyond measure, is beside the point in a lot of ways. So that's one of the things that I will take with me, that, people are people and kids are kids. And, whether I'm coaching at Bolingbrook or whether I'm coaching the Hoop Summit, some of the issues are the exact same. The issues inside the gym, the issues like when we go out for team meals, and I don't mean issues, but like just the way people carry themselves are very similar to what we have at Bolingbrook. And so, it's just refreshing to see that those kids, meaning the Hoop Summit guys, aren't any different than our guys. And all of them are about to become millionaires here in about a month through college and NIL and all of that stuff. So, and then some of them are going to be ultimately NBA players and NBA money. And so, that part is different, of course, but the music they listen to, how they, goof around, the clothes they wear, the shoes they like, all of those things are very similar to what our guys at Bolingbrook like. And so that part was refreshing. And to a large extent, the preparation for the game and all of that is also very similar to what we do, at Bolingbrook. And so, that part, just not that you need confirmation that what you're doing is correct, but that part is always refreshing for me because, I know that what we're doing and how we're doing it at Bolingbrook is in the right direction. That doesn't mean everything's correct all the time and that I do a great job every second. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that in general, good basketball is good basketball. And how you get a culture of good basketball happening is the same no matter what. And you can look, we were talking right before we jumped on there, like, you can look at the Phoenix Suns and what differentiates them and their culture from some other teams. And I don't want to get into an NBA debate here, but you know what I'm saying? The good culture is good culture, whether you're at the NBA level, whether you're at Bolingbrook High School, whether you're at Hoop Summit. Everybody needs to work hard. We try to be as unselfish as possible. We try to share. We'd be happy for others. We're grateful for any experiences that we get. And we're certainly grateful for other people's success. And we want to help them be successful. So those things are true throughout basketball and life. And so just the overall experience was just really, really, I'm just grateful in more ways than I can even express.
So much of that, what you just described, Rob, to me as you're talking, what I'm thinking is that the processes that are required to have success at, let's say, a school like yours where you're playing high school basketball at a very, very high level, the processes there are the same if I'm playing at a small rural high school that has an enrollment of 75 kids. And that process is the same at the Hoop Summit. That process is the same if you're coaching at Duke or you're coaching at Kent State, or it's the same if you're coaching at the NBA level or you're coaching in the Euro League, whatever. There are just certain things that, regardless of the level of play, regardless of the talent of the players that are playing. And it's funny, and I know I've heard you say something similar before when you've been to these USA basketball events, that the way that the kids conduct themselves, you watch them on the court, and because of their talent and because of their skill level and because of the physical tools that they have, you watch them and you're like, wow, like you're blown away by what they can do on the basketball floor. And then as soon as that buzzer goes off and they walk off the floor and they pick up their duffel bag, they're the same as any other kid. And I think you can talk and take that to any other level as well. Like, we spend so much time watching basketball on TV, whether we're watching college basketball, whether you're watching the NBA. And when we see players on TV, we see them for their talent and their skill level. And occasionally you see things that are indicative maybe of their leadership or the type of teammates that they are, but we don't see that nearly as much. And then we definitely don't see, unless they want us to see it, we don't get an opportunity to see what they're like off the floor. And yet, I'm sure that an NBA coach or an NBA player, if you put somebody in their same age demographic and looked at what they're doing off the floor and the way that they're just being as a person, it's all similar. And yet we kind of put people on a pedestal. And I think what I always take away from your experience, Rob, and again, this is me vicariously living through you, is the fact that when you're working with players that are at that high of a level, I think that from the outside, there are many people, probably I would include myself in this group, that if all of a sudden I'm working with a kid who's 17 years old, who I know that probably 2 years from now, this kid might be the number one pick in the NBA draft, that I'd be a little like, oh, I don't know if I should I say that? Should I correct? Like, who am I to correct this kid who's going to be making millions of dollars and might end up being a top 10 pick in the NBA draft? And every time I have this conversation with you and I hear you talk about it, it always brings me back to the fact that those guys, their talent level may be higher, but ultimately every player wants the same thing, right? They want to get better. They want to be coached regardless of where they're at. And that's what I always take away from your experiences, is just the fact that I'm sure there are people that listen to this and are like, how are you a high school coach and you go in and all of a sudden you're talking to guys who are future pros? How do you navigate that? And I always think that your answer is always just, I do the same thing. I'm doing exactly what I do with my high school guys. I'm doing the exact same thing with the guys that I coach with USA Basketball. And that's what always strikes me whenever you and I have this conversation. I don't know if that makes any sense to you at all, what I just said, but that's what I take away.
I think it makes total sense. And, it just little things like, as soon as we get done with practice, now, obviously there's a 20-minute media session, but that wouldn't happen at Bolingbrook High School, except for one day when we have media day. But so then there's a 20-minute media session. And then when everybody gets done, they immediately pull out their phones before they even change their shoes and check their phone. And it's just exactly like what happens at Bolingbrook. And, then they start making fun of each other and poke fun at each other. It's just, it was so refreshing in that way. But I had been around those guys long enough that I knew that that's what it would be like. And I know that they all want to be coached, and they're the same thing as us, right? Like, they come to Hoop Summit and they think, hey, I'm going to have the best coaches in the country, so I better be quiet and listen because these guys really know their stuff. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But I would hope that it is. But, and it's just like, we end up practice. At Hoop Summit, there's 3 or 4 guys getting extra shots up, and there's 6 or 7 guys just getting their gear on and getting, just like at Bolingbrook, there's 3 or 4 guys getting extra shots up, and then there's 3 or 4 guys that just want to take off and be done. And that's fine. I'm not judging any of those that are doing any of those things, but the gym is very, very similar. As soon as practice gets over, 2 or 3 guys immediately would get some support staff and get extra shots up and get this and that and, done. And then other guys wouldn't do that. And it's all fine. But that's the exact same thing that happens at Bolingbrook when we get done with practice. 2 or 3 guys will try to get extra shots up and get more work in before we have to leave. And then most will just get their stuff on and, get to the next thing. So it's just very similar in more ways than you think. And then obviously, the Hoop Summit guys have a little bit, I don't know if pressure is the right word, but there's dollars that follow them based on their performance, right? And so that's a little bit different than, and when there's every NBA team watching your practice and every move you make and all of that, that's a little bit heightened focus on everything you're doing, which that is definitely not happening at Bolingbrook High School. But, you know, it's more similar than it is different. I'll just say it like that.
Tell me about some of the guys that you had an opportunity to work with. Maybe, and I don't want you to slight anyone,
and I would never do that.
But maybe a guy or two that just stood out to you for whatever reason. That somebody out there who's listening, that's part of our audience, that's a college basketball fan, an NBA fan. Who are some guys that we're going to see come on the national radar if they aren't already there now?
Well,
what are we going to like about these guys?
Yeah, well, I am an enormous, probably the number one fan of Cam Boozer of anyone on the planet. He just the way he goes about his business, the way he doesn't take things too seriously, but at the same time, he handles his business like a professional already. And he's 17, 18 years old. Obviously, he's uber talented. So that goes without saying with all of these guys. But Cam and Caden, both really humble kids, really nice kids, and really handle their business in a way that I really respected. And Cam is ultra talented, obviously. And I've told many people, I mean, I think he could play in the NBA right now because his body is ready. Mentally, I think he's ready for those things. But, stop off at Duke for a year or two probably is not going to hurt him at all.
Probably not.
And so, I think he was great. And, the talent level is just immense from all of these guys. But you take a guy like Trey McKinney, who I think he had 18 or 19 points in our game. He played a role, and he mentally, was able to take everything that we threw at him and everything that the game threw at us, if that makes sense. And so I really respect that. But all of our guys, I mean, I could go down the entire list: Darius and Nate and Caden and Mikkel, Chris, all of them, Jalen, Jasper, Nick is a really, really unique player from California who's going to Duke as well. I love him. Malachi is going to be a really, really good player as well. So all these guys are at the next level. But, AJ, of course, is ultra talented as well and, can do just about anything he wants on the basketball floor at any time. And so, they were all really, really, really good. But I'm super, super high on, and not just because I think they'll be in the NBA or something like that, but, Cam, the way he carries himself, and he was on my team several times, at training camps and at other USA events. So I knew him a little bit better than maybe I knew some of the other guys. So that was helpful, but just the way he just is steady and just does what he does. And I think in the game he had 20 some points, 16 rebounds. I mean, he just dominated from start to finish, in my opinion. And so, I have nothing negative to say about any of the Hoop Summit guys. And some of the world team guys were much better than I thought as well. And those guys are going to have, great careers as well. And, you take a kid like Dame Sarr on the world team, he's getting recruited by every top school here in America as well. So you're going to see some of those world guys really make their mark, in basketball terms as well. And some of them already have made their mark in Europe and now are going to do it in the NBA eventually.
As part of the event, is there any, I don't know if off the court discussions, sort of the mental side of what these guys have to go through in terms of, You talked about sort of the monetary pressure that's obviously pushing on them, that's not pushing on the average 17 or 18-year-old kid, the spotlight that some of them have been under. Obviously, in the case of the Boozer twins, they've been sort of under the microscope because their dad was a professional basketball player.
Yeah.
But did you guys talk with any of them about sort of that off the court, just being able to handle things?
Yep. Well, obviously each coach has unique conversations with every player. So, and the connections you make and those conversations obviously are between them. But USA Basketball does a really, really good job. They had Jamal Crawford come in and go to dinner with the guys. And it was just them, right? So they could ask him anything because he knows what they're about to go through. And then Chris Bosh came in, very similar situation. So USA Basketball does a really, really good job of taking a holistic approach to this whole thing. And, in training camps that we've had prior, which all these guys have been to, the NCAA is a part of it. NBA Players Association is part of it, where they get some financial literacy, they get mental health, issues, awareness about all of those things and the resources that are available to them. And then for this particular event, like I said, USA Basketball did a great job of bringing Jamal in, and Jamal did a really, really outstanding job. And I'm not privy to the conversations, obviously, that he had with individual players and they had with them, but he did a great job of just, hey, let's talk about it all. That's why I'm here. And so this is not about basketball, although it is. That's what brings us together. But they had really earnest conversations with him, and the same thing with Chris Bosh when he came as well. So USA Basketball does a great job with the holistic approach to this entire thing, even though it's an abbreviated period of time, and we're still trying to prepare to win a game. So, that's another thing that USA Basketball does a really, really good job of, and that is taking a holistic approach to every single player.
I think that's been, if you look at the history of basketball and you go back, Rob, to when you and I were young kids, and you look at guys who made it professionally to the NBA and the number of players who ended up having challenges in one area or another in their personal lives. And that's not to say that there aren't guys today that have challenges in their personal lives or have made mistakes, but it does feel like, for the fact that the NBA especially is younger than it's ever been,
Yep.
and the guys that come in, how well they've been prepared in terms of managing their lives off the court and handling the media and being able to deal with the spotlight. And of course, we all know sort of the attention that's been given to players' mental health when Kevin Love and DeMar DeRozan talked about their struggles with that. And it just feels like guys have come in to the league and have a better understanding of how to manage their life off the court. And to me, that's always, I think, an amazing part of what these players have to go through at age 16, 17, 18 as they become more famous than you and I could ever imagine, the number of people that know them, and for them to be able to handle that. And I try to go back and think about myself as a 16, 17, 18-year-old and where I was from a mental standpoint, and just being able to handle all the things that are thrown at these guys that they have to be able to deal with. And that's irrespective of what they have to do on the court, which, as you said, they're practicing with 30 NBA teams sitting in the stands, evaluating them, figuring out, hey, where are these guys eventually going to slot when they become eligible to be drafted and all those things, which is a whole nother level of pressure. But I just think that whether it's USA Basketball or the NBA Players Association or the NCAA or different college programs or even high school coaches in so many cases, right, are talking to guys about making good decisions, not just on the floor, but off the floor. And I think it's a credit to the basketball community that we've given the kids who have this much talent on the floor, some of this guidance that I think in the past, if you go back to the 70s, 80s, early to mid 90s, a lot of this it just wasn't there.
Yeah.
And you look at the number of guys that potentially their careers didn't turn out the way that maybe they would have if they had had some more stability off the court. I just think it's a credit to the entire basketball community that this is the direction that we've gone.
Yeah, there's no question that there's been a big focus and a big shift really towards that. And, a lot of times, kids, the basketball part is the easy part for them a lot of times, right? Because that's what they've been training since they were 6 years old or whatever it was to do, and they've been working out and they've been doing. But the mental health aspect of it, the financial literacy aspect of it, and all of those things, they need training in that as well. Just like you and I probably needed the training, but we didn't get that because we were not that, and it wasn't really as readily available. And there's less stigma on that now than there was, 20 years ago or even like 10 years ago, to be honest with you. And so I think USA Basketball in particular has done a really good job of recognizing, and then not only recognizing that it's a need, but then putting resources and people in place to address those things, which is great. We were joking around as coaches at the last training camp. Like, remember at training camp when we used to have like 4-hour practices and we just had 4-hour practice and then we ate and we came back and practiced for 4 hours? Well, now we don't do that because they have those other things are embedded in there, like the financial literacy piece, NCAA rules, mental health issues. Those things are embedded in the curriculum, not just on court. And so the steps forward in those areas have been refreshing as well.
Absolutely. All right, Rob, is there anything else, a final story, a final takeaway that you want to leave us with your experience at the Hoop Summit?
Man, I'm just grateful for the entire experience. There's a lot of, inside scoop, inside story, those types of things that maybe you and I'll discuss if we ever meet up in Louisville again or something like that. But it was a great experience for me professionally, but it was even more great experience for me personally because I learned, you learn more about people. And the more I do this, the more I realize that the really, really good and nice people are the ones that really, really good stuff happens to. And so, not that it's a guarantee of any sort, and obviously bad things happen to good people, and I'm not saying that, but you kind of get the gist of what I'm saying, and that, I used to think like, man, I just have to grind it out. I'm going to have to be an a-hole here, and I might have to, burn some bridges here. And the exact opposite is true. And the longer I do this, the more I realize that, and it's, to be quite honest with you, it's refreshing. And so, that's been a great part of my journey, the whole USA Basketball family and everything that's been a part of it. So, I'm just grateful beyond measure. And, I'm looking forward to the next opportunity if one comes, and if one doesn't come, I'm grateful for the opportunities that I've had.
It's great stuff, Rob. And I always enjoy the conversations after you get an opportunity to go, because like I said, I feel like I learn from what you've been able to experience as you go and work with USA Basketball in these various capacities. So thanks for sharing. I know the audience, I'm sure, enjoyed the episode. Triple Double number 18 in the books, and we'll be back next month with number 19. So Rob, again, thank you for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it. And to everyone out there, thanks for listening, and we will catch you on our next episode. Thanks.
Your first impression is everything when applying for a new coaching job. A professional coaching portfolio is the tool that highlights your coaching achievements and philosophies, and most of all, helps separate you and your abilities from the other applicants. The Coaching Portfolio Guide is an instructional membership-based website that helps you develop a personalized portfolio. Each section of the portfolio guide provides detailed instructions on how to organize your portfolio in a professional manner. The guide also provides sample documents for each section of your portfolio that you can copy, modify, and add to your personal portfolio. As a Hoopheads Pod listener, you can get your coaching portfolio guide for just $25. Visit coachingportfolioguide.com/hoopheads to learn more.
Thanks for listening to the Hoopheads Podcast, presented by Head Start Basketball.